Hello and welcome to another one of your scheduled Genshin Impact version reviews. Today we're taking a look at the 6.4 or Luna 5. We got no Archon Quest nor a new area in this patch, so we only had events and Varka's release with his story quest being the only story related thing that we've got. Although it might as well have been called a sort of interlude or Archon Quest, so it definitely is going to be a big part of this video, because yeah, it was seriously very important to actually do this, so we're covering that. And then, you know, we had our events, with the big event being in Mondstadt. Who could have guessed? It's you know, Varka's release, so we're definitely going to Mondstadt for the main event. And then of course the minor events with Shillian being in there. And so shall we immediately begin with Varka's story quest? Because we have to talk about it. It's to be expected. Varka has connections to so much stuff and important figures in the lore that it's impossible to not make his story quest important. And while the latter half of his quest was the here's an NPC that's bad, evil, go get him playable character, since we were talking about the Bloodstained Knight, it completely avoided any concerns with going that route. So, overall, the quest was simply amazing. As mentioned, it might as well be considered an Archon Quest part. I mean, if they are done with Totore somehow or some bullshit, you could call it an interlude. But yeah, since it also does follow up on Nodokai's situation after the previous Archon Quest act, so seriously, it's as much an Archon Quest, it's as much integrated into the Archon Quest as the other character quests that they forced in the act. But seriously, everything just flowed perfectly. Most, if not all, characters involved played a good role in it, and of course Varka completely stole the show. Even if you aren't a Varka fan per se, it is way more than worth doing the quest. So, with that out of the way, not much is left to talk about, since there wasn't anything else except for events in this patch. It definitely, in its own void, was a pretty empty patch. And, well, soon, just give me a moment, you will see why the events didn't really help most of that time. But, honestly, outside of that void, hey, this anime season and the upcoming one kind of made me not pay much attention to this fact. Really, this patch felt like it came out 2 days ago. Not to take away from its emptiness. Oh no. It just goes to show that Genshin went from a game that you could give in half an hour, maybe an hour or so, maybe combing through the map to find a puzzle or a chest or anything else in the nice maps that they used to make, to finishing everything in such a short time because of the way it is made. You can go check out the video on the previous version 6.3 to see more of my detailed opinions on that, since we had a new area on that patch. And then you have nothing to really do. I mean, honestly, even artifact farming for me is somehow done really quickly. I mean, it's definitely thanks to all of the quality of life and other features that they've also added, but also just from regular farming. It's of course luck, but I literally need like 4 sets of the new artifacts for the Hexenringel characters, but my Varka set, my Venti set, and my Durin set were all done super quickly, without necessarily crafting stuff from the transmuter and things, the artifact transmuter. And then now that I want the fucking Razor one because I just got a C6, I'm getting the bad luck. But this is going to bleed into the other patch. Not this patch, literally. This patch I was so quickly done. With 3 characters, it's insane. So yeah, the game just feels very empty. Anyway, it's time for events. Because, again, there's nothing much to talk about, anything else. No area, no Archon Quest, it's only Varka's, and yeah, it was good. Like, there's no need to go into super duper crazy detail. It was simply just very good. Anyway, events. Our main event was in Mondstadt. Again, who could have guessed with Varka's release? And it was a very nostalgia trip-based event. For minor events, Shillian is always going to eat up a slot. And then we have a sort of photo-taking event, which, yes, I'll keep the one big what it was for when we get to it, and also a tower defense event. Main event first, of course, was I mean, yeah, it was nostalgia baiting and everything, but it was also simply very, very good. Hell, you would have expected something like this to be in the anniversary of the game, which is usually when they do anything pertaining to the past of your journey. They usually do some sort of web event thing. But here in this random Mondstadt event, we have a complete retread of the Archon Quest, of the Mondstadt Archon Quest, more or less. It was fun for what it was. It didn't have any pacing issues. The whole cast was fantastic to see in the story, whether they were playing some sort of role or not. And once again, Varka stole the spotlight at the end. I mean, the twist to see what would have happened had the Traveler not appeared was very interesting for how much they could show, since it's an event story, so they cannot do a lot of stuff. Also, again, most likely the, let's say, budget of developers and whatnot would not have gone there, right? Because it's an event story rather than an actual Archon Quest. So again, they were most likely working with some stricter stuff to again show you what could have been, what could have been. Generally, it's one of the best event stories because it's got a pretty good story as it's based, for sure. As for the minigames, I wasn't expecting to see, not drama exactly, I can't really call that, but the kind of discussion that I did see for one of the minigames. I wasn't expecting to see that. But yes, we had an on-rails and top-down shooter minigame, very arcade game styled, a cocktail making minigame, and of course a combat minigame, as well as a spot the anomaly minigame. The shooter was fine. You controlled a hawk, I believe it wasn't an eagle or something. It might have been an eagle, but I think it was a hawk or something, flying through the air, and you shot down targets to gain points. There were some power-ups, although they felt kind of not like arcade game power-ups, shooter arcade game power-ups at all, that you usually keep until you get hit or something. They were just a classic Genshin effect for a short duration. It wasn't anything crazy, nor was it extremely boring. It just simply did get repetitive the more stages you played, so I guess it was neutral to good. Can't say the same for that cocktail minigame. Oh boy, I really don't know how out of all the shitty minigames that they have put in main events and any other event, that this sparked people to really talk about it. Very simply, you made cocktails for a playable character, and then they didn't like it, so you got some dialogue with them to give you hints how to modify the drink, and then you made them the modified version. The problem? It got repetitive immediately. I mean, the cocktail making could have been a bit faster because they always had to zoom the camera in and out or place it in a spot to hide the missing animation or missing liquid being poured or missing object being cut. You get the idea. So the requirement to move the camera slowly after every decision in the making process and waiting for the traveler to do the literally useless animations, they were doing nothing, made the making process feel like shit. But the repetitiveness was definitely the dialogue part, because every single time you were needed to make another drink, so the first time you went through that slog, you knew it was useless. There was no point because you knew that you would need to make another drink. Couple that also gaining hints to the modifications of the drinks wasn't an interesting process at all. You didn't need to pick specific topics to actually learn what you should modify, because every single time you would be needed to pick every topic to actually unlock all the modifications to proceed. So they made the one interesting thing that they could make interesting not interesting. Every single stage, it was pick all of the topics, not pick some to get what you need, and if you want, pick others for some extra dialogue, not at all, and then make the second drink. Also, why the fuck did this minigame have like double the stages of everything else? I mean, it's not like the shooter one or the combat one were so much more interesting, but I would much rather them over this having more stages. They could have easily broken this whole thing of making a drink and then remaking it by making one stage a playable character showing up and doing this process, and then the other stage would be an NPC, but, you know, a more well-known NPC, a duo of NPCs showing up. They order 2 different drinks, you make the drinks, and that's the stage, and repeat the cycle. One stage is a playable character, NPCs, playable character, you get the idea. They could have easily broken this shitty repetitiveness by doing that, but they didn't. So every single time, make a drink, ask all of the questions, and all of the hints are just given to you, and then make the other drink, dumb fuck. As for the combat minigame, it did not fare that much better. You needed to kill waves of enemies, but also passively and through specific means, which you know of course meant shield with the lunar reactions. You would charge up a bar that gave you control of the Jan Spirit. It's meant to be the knight that Jan's title comes from, but they didn't use another model or animations. But you controlled it and sent slices of whatever the fuck, energy, whatever you want to call it was, to hit enemies in their weak spots and kill them. It completely destroyed the flow of combat, and also made combat kind of useless since they wanted you to get the majority of the points using the spirit. You barely got anything from just the combat alone. And also, in order to change the enemies showing up, you had to go through that process, else the enemies never changed. Just boring, uninteresting, and unsatisfying. Next! The anomaly finding minigame placed you in an area of Mondstadt and you needed to find any abnormalities in the scenery. It was 3D, you had to walk around and find them. Most of the time, some playable character or characters were involved with a ton of callbacks. And I'm not just talking like Mondstadt story or event related things. There were like 2 Simulanka squirrels talking about the abysmal to this day Crystal Fly Trap, and how nobody used it. It's not like people really give a fuck about it even now. Like, seriously, people, why the fuck would you use the Crystal Flight Trap to get like 10 or 14 per week or something? You can walk around Mondstadt and get 50 of them in 3 minutes. Anyways, other like was Rosaria using her uncensored outfit and stuff like that. Callbacks or things you would never expect. Also, a boar wanted to cook itself. That was one of the abnormalities. That's certainly something. It might have been the best minigame out of them all. Genuinely. So overall, this main event was amazing in story, but the minigames were extremely lacking. The shooter was neutral, the mixing one was boring and horrendously repetitive, the combat one was just bad, and the anomaly finding one was good. So how the fuck can you even rank this sort of mix? Honestly, if you wanted to do something interesting and go with the nostalgia baiting, hey, you know you could kind of, let's say, the anomaly minigame placed you inside of a fantastic monster. That was the entire point of the story as well, is that Alice was creating this sort of game, let's say, that told the story of what happened. Here's a fun fact. Couldn't they have done a minigame, or say, like, generally, strip all of the other minigames, fuck them out of here? Couldn't they have done, like, this sort of go into this game world and literally re-explore Mondstadt? Just basically a reset on your exploration of Mondstadt. I mean, most likely Dragonspine out. But yeah, literally that. Just re-explore Mondstadt in a way. I mean, with potentially like a nice compass, like the lunar one in order, like the Nodecraig one, in order to not miss chest and do it quickly because it's an event. Here you can actually, you know, there's a reason to make it actually a quick exploration thingy, but it's still like legitimately just reset Mondstadt basically, make that the event minigame and make it last the entire version. I think it would have been the best fucking event we would have ever gotten. Legitimately. The best, one of the better stories, and then the best mini game. Legitimately, that's what they should have done. If you wanted to nostalgia bait me, just make me redo Mondstadt, but with what I've got now. Just again, with all the puzzles and everything that was there. That's it. Nothing else. But they didn't do that. Shit. So, anyways, moving on. Let's move on. Shillian was Shillian, so we can get to minor events. Shillian Onslaught, there was the Varka Shield boss, the Mandragora, but more so it's a Venti check. Next was the Flynn's Shield with the Knuckle Duckle Fuckle, and last the Skirk and Escoffier Shield with the Overseer Automaton. Wow, insane shilling, baby, who could have guessed? And it's gonna get horrendously worse once the next patch comes in, oh boy. Now for the last minor events. The photo one was a two-parter. One part wanted you to align a picture with the scenery to fill in the photo. The hitbox, let's say, I can't really get the word out right now, was very generous, so it wasn't tough at all to do. And then the second part was Pokemon Snap. Quite literally, a complete copy of Pokemon Snap from what, 1999? Or somewhere there. What the fuck did one of the devs have? Like, what the hell happened? Did one of the devs have a nostalgia gaming trip and said, I have to make Pokemon Snap in Genshin? Or like what? If you somehow don't know about Pokemon Snap, you are placed on rails and you move the camera around to photograph Pokemon, and that exactly was what the event was. You were on rails with a very limiting camera in terms of movement, photographing specifically placed animals and whatnot. It was boring. Not only did the stages last so long because you moved so slowly, the camera was ass to use. You barely could move it because of how limiting I already mentioned it was. Also, the appeal of Pokemon Snap was to see the, really big variety of Pokemon in their natural habitat, doing their natural instinct things as they are described in the Pokédex and things. But here, everything was pre-placed and pre-done, so it didn't feel natural. Also, Pokemon are Pokemon. They are not Genshins very obviously based on real-life animals, or Saurians and whatnot. So it was very clear that anything you saw them do was specifically for the event. It was just ass. A horrendous copy of Pokemon Snap. I mean, we have seen how many times Genshin devs have copied older games, and very badly, so it was not a surprise to me, but I have to call it what it was, and that is boring and bad. Also, you had to photograph multiple, as they were fucking called, fun objects in a single photo, but they couldn't decide on if they wanted the player to wait a bit before snapping the photo or take the photo right then and there. So many fucking times you would have a scene where 5 fun objects are sitting there, and you're like, oh, okay, I'll snap the 5, that should be a good multiplier, only for 2 seconds in, for another 4 of them to appear, so now you could have done a 9 one. But then the next time where you're like, oh, here's 4 fun objects, so I should wait in order for more to appear, and then they didn't fucking appear. So you completely lost them. And also for the previous example, yeah, you took the photograph of the 5 ones and then the 4 ones appeared. If you took another photograph, those 5 ones weren't counted. So it was just ass. And hell no fucking way am I going to redo this slog of a minigame event to now know that, oh, I should wait in the scene. Fuck off. And last was, and also, oh my goodness, it was the fact that it really felt kind of hard to get the points in order to get the maximum rewards, actually. Many a times I felt like I barely got them, actually. It seriously felt like I barely was able to get the points needed for the rewards. In this kind of a fucking event, how fucking dare you even imply that I might have to fucking do this again? No fucking shot. Holy shit. And last was the tower defense minigame. And honestly, if you already know about tower defense games, this was pretty easy. It was the style where you have a small variety of towers, but you can modify them to what you want. What you had was one main offensive tower. It was like a chicken. Then another trap-based tower that was put in the path of the enemies rather than the chickens that were placed on higher ground. You get the idea. And then lastly was some sort of currency obtaining tower. And the way it went was that you placed one of these towers, and then you could choose what you wanted the tower to do. The chickens could be Pyro, Electro, and Anemo, and then they could get 2 more upgrades, which were chosen from, which you had 1 out of 3 to select, and you did it twice. And same for the traps, they could be Hydro, Cryo, or Geo. And then again, they could also get 2 upgrades out of a selection of 3. And then the currency ones were either you got the currency for upgrading and getting the towers, of course, and then energy for the supporting skills that, oh, for fuck's sake, Genshin devs just love to put these supporting abilities in these kinds of minigames. Anyway, if you know tower defenses, it was a very easy event to do. But it also was just ass. If you knew tower defense, you just knew how bad it was because so many things were just so useless. I mean, thank fuck with Genshin, you've got the elements, you've got stuff like that, and the interactions that you can have with enemies makes placing the towers and stuff actually kind of interesting. Generally, this tower defense game is It's definitely not the best tower defense I've ever played, that's for sure, but it's far from the worst one. I think worse than this is the Zenless one, because because in Genshin, again, you have actual interactions with the enemies, and in the Zenless tower defense game they did, you didn't, so it was super boring. Nevertheless, the thing is that so many things were useless. For the offensive towers, Anemo was absolutely useless. There was no reason to put a tower to Anemo, because the Anemo towers, well, they didn't have inbuilt viridescent, so they weren't there for reducing the resistances, and then also, one of the upgrades you could get on the towers was res reduction. So there was no point in going the Anemo route, because you already had a res reduction ready. And again, Swirl did nothing for interacting with the enemies. There weren't any enemies that specifically wanted Swirl in order to deal with them. Same for the traps. The Geo option for the traps was completely useless. Yes, I know, there were Geo Slimes and Geo Lava Churls, but guess what? Since you're not using Anemo at all, you're always picking Pyro and Electro for your DPS towers, and guess what breaks Geo Shields? Overload! and then also, there were so many Geo Slimes, so once the trap broke the Geo Shield from the Geo Slimes, it was completely useless! Because it can't deal damage to them. The upgrades to the towers were just bad. For the offensive towers, you basically always picked the rapid fire option, because all of the other ones were useless. And then for the second upgrade, one of the towers had to be the res reduction one, and then the other two were kind of useless. There was supposed to be a thing AoE and single target damage, but you barely felt their effects. And same goes for the traps. I mean, the traps had a little bit more on the choice. I think 2 out of the 3 upgrades were kind of useless. I think kind of useful in the second like upgrade or something. But you would basically always get the pulling one or the shockwave one to apply the element of the trap, and then the shackling mechanism. Because why the fuck would you put anything else? I think there was a death reduction one, but still, like that was the problem. Was that you would basically make the same towers again and again, because there was no point. Everything else was useless. Literally useless. It made your towers actively worse. So why would you pick the other upgrades? And then, oh my goodness, and then the last stage was meant to be this infinite, like this ever-looping version of the other stages, but it was trash. It was trash because A, the enemies felt like they had double or triple the HP of the other stages as the waves went by, and literally around wave 7 or 8, which isn't a lot of waves in, they basically just summon a fuck ton of lava churls, and especially, I think it's the Electro Lava Churls that disable your towers. Thanks, Genshin devs. In this tower defense minigame, there's an enemy that completely disables my towers, and I can't do fuck all. I mean, if it's one Electro Lava Churl, yeah, I guess I can use the supporting skill that freezes the enemies, but they were literally like 5 Electro Lava Churls, all chain disabling the towers. So it's literally a fuck you wave to just finish it. So why the fuck is it even called an endless mode? It's not an endless mode. It clearly ends at wave 7 or 8. Like, come the fuck on, man. Really now? So, just as the stages went by, like, I generally started the first and second stage being like, okay, you know, this is actually kind of nice. It's a fine tower defense. And then as the stages went on, I was like, yeah, these upgrades are ass. I'm never building Anemo towers. I'm always building the same traps and shit. And like, wow, it barely makes a difference. The stage layout as it's changing barely makes any difference. So that was the tower defense minigame. The tower defense event, sorry. And that was also 6.4 or Luna 5. It was pretty empty, with the only highlights being Varka's story quest and the main event story. Anything else was just bad or neutral at best, and it also felt like the 2 minor events came right at the end of the patch. That's how it felt for me, at least, that's for sure. So you really needed to have something else to do, because Genshin was definitely not filling up your time. As for the next version, we still don't have another Archon Quest part, but quite literally, we are going to get what seems to be the most important fucking quest in the entirety of the game, and it's going to be an unvoiced world quest. Congratulations. Why the fuck isn't it like the Dane quests, where it's an Archon quest, but it's outside of the Archon quests of the nations? It's just world quest. What the fuck? We are getting a Mondstadt expansion with Dorman Port, but it literally is 5% of the new area that we are getting. The other 95% is connected to that world quest. So much for more Mondstadt. Anyway, next video should be the Abyss Cinema Genome Theater for April, so we are a bit away from that. Also, I'm not pulling for Linnea, I don't know how her name is pronounced. Because I don't like her at all. She looks like she really doesn't belong in Genshin, in my honest opinion. She is literally a Honkai character. The most miHoYo design that has ever been. Like, people were saying that for Skirk. Motherfucker, here comes a contender. Here comes a new challenger. So yeah, in my opinion, she doesn't look like she belongs in Genshin at all. And she's a complete lunar crystallized shield, so you know how well the combat modes are going to be next patch. Anyway, I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.